What's going on, guys? Welcome to You Suck at Coding. This is the part 3 of MERN Authentication tutorial series, in which we'll be learning how to integrate the previously created frontend and the backend together. So let's get started. Alright, so I've arranged my editor and my browser appropriately. So as a first step, let's go ahead and start both the front end and the back end. So I'll do a cd client and npm start for the front end and a cd server and npm start for the back end. Perfect, so everything's running. Let's go to the sign up page. So inside of the sign up page, as a first step, what I want to do is add some icons for the password checks. So let's go to source, pages, and sign up. So there's two icons that I want to add, which is a check circle icon and a cancel icon. So I'm just going to paste the imports from Material UI's website. You can pause the video and write it down if you want. So how I want to use these is for them to be displayed if a validation condition is met or not. So if it's met, it will show a green colored check circle. And if it's not met, we'll show a cross, a cancel icon in red. So as of now, if I start typing the password, see it's just the text. So I'll be making some changes to the snippet of code. Let me just go ahead and paste it, and then I can explain it and do the same for the rest. That's what it is. Alright, so here we go. So we have a cross icon now in red for the at least 6 characters. And if I go ahead, make this visible and change this. So as soon as I have 6 characters, it turns green like it did before, but now it also has a check icon. So this is the behavior that we want for all of them. So what I've essentially done is replace that div with these two spans. And each of the spans has a class, which the first is text success, the second is danger. So this is the green portion and this is the red portion. This one has the check circle icon, and this one has a cancel icon with the same text, which is inside of a small tag. It says at least 6 characters. So we want this behavior for all of them. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this for all of the divs, and then just replace the condition for all of them. So let's just paste it first, and then we can change the text and the conditions. All right, so we have this for all of them. Let's start from the very top to this one. Okay, so let's do has lower char. Text, we can do 1 lowercase. Copy and paste this. Perfect. So we have a lowercase, it's checked and it's in green. Okay, so that's what we have here now. So if I go ahead and add a number, it has one number now, and if I add an exclamation, which is a special symbol, it turns green as well. Right, so it looks much cleaner than before, and it makes more sense to have some icons rather than just simple text. So that was the first step, and now what I'm going to do is install some of the packages that we'll be needing in addition to the ones that we already have. So let's go ahead and create another terminal, and the first one is going to be .env, which is the exact similar to the one that we've done for the backend to store some of the URL links or any of the other sensitive information that we do not want for the repository to have online. And the other one is React Toastify, which is basically the toast notifications that you guys have seen in one of the first videos with the demo. At the top right. So I'll do an enter, and this should install both of them in the packet.json. And as a next step, what I'll do is create a .env file inside of the client repository and not the source. create a new file .env, and in order for React to pick this up, we'll also have to restart the project. So I'll do add a React app API URL, which is for the backend, and this is going to be http localhost 8080. And again, the reason that we do this is because once we have the functions that integrate with the APIs in the backend, and let's say I go ahead and deploy my server somewhere, I do not want to change it in every function and everywhere inside of the website. So if we use this variable with the process.env, we'll just have to do it once from here. Okay. So as a next step, what I'm going to do now is create the API functions. This is basically what we'll be using in the front end to integrate with the API endpoints that we have in the backend. So I'll create a folder inside of client. Actually, before I do that, let's just go ahead and restart it so that, just to make sure that this .env works. So I'll do npm start inside of client, and this should refresh, and that's fine. Meanwhile, what we'll do is now create a new folder inside of client. Let's call this one API. And inside of API, create a file called user.js, similar to the ones that we've created in the backend, so that things are all consistent. And this is going to have parameters, username, email, and password. And arrow function. Yeah, this is what we have. So a slight optimization to this would be to change these positional arguments or parameters to keywords, which is very useful if you have a lot of arguments that you're passing to a function, and this way there's no mismatch if you just mess up the placement of them. So how that is done is that we create an object inside of which these are, and I'm going to do an is equal to and an empty object, and now we can go ahead and pass these as keyword arguments from inside of the sign up page. So that's fine, we'll do that later. And I'm going to create a user object with exactly these fields. So it's username, email, and password, and this is the object that will be passing inside of the body. So it's an asynchronous function. Let's do a try and catch. Okay, so inside of try, so const response is equal to await fetch, and inside of fetch I'll do the backticks so that I can access the environment variable process.env .react app API URL. So that will get the localhost 8080 for now, and the endpoint that we're looking for is /register. And with that, we also pass some of the options, including the headers. So this one is going to be a post request. So we're creating a user with the registration, and for the headers, it's actually pretty standard except application JSON, and the next one is going to be content type, again application JSON. And then we can go ahead and pass the body, which is a stringified version of this user object that we have. So once we do that, as a response, do a return, which is what we'll be accessing inside of the sign up page. So a return, do an await, because we'll be creating the response into JSON using the .json method. So this is the response that we'll be receiving inside of the sign up page. So let's go ahead and tackle the catch part 2. So if there's an error, we want to throw a new error that says cannot register at this time. And maybe what we can do is also print the error. So we'll do again template literals and just add error at the end of it. Awesome. So that is the integration function that we've created for register. So now let's go ahead and do it for the login too. It's pretty similar, so I'm just gonna copy this and paste it at the bottom, and let's take it from here. Modify the name to login. This one's going to just have the email and the password, so let's get rid of the username, and similarly in the user object too, let's change this to login. And other than that, it's pretty much it, except there's an additional field. Since we'll be communicating with the credentials, which is basically the JWT token, we want that communication for the token from the browser, the HTTP only token. So I'll add another field. It says credentials include, and that should do it. Let's change this to cannot login at this time. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the login. So now let's go ahead and tackle the logout, which is going to be a get function. So it's a little different. Export const logout. Let's do an async. And side of try, let's do response, await fetch. This is going to be again the same. env dot React API URL, and the endpoint is logout. So for the options, it's a method get, and we also would be needing credentials include for this one. All right, let's create a catch. For this one, let's just simply do a console log. So I'm just going to do console.log with the errors for this one. All right, is there anything we're missing? Yeah, it's the response. Let's do return await response.json. All right, so the last one that's left now is the get user, which is again a get request. So it's going to be pretty similar. Let's copy and paste this, take it from here. Let's change this to get user. I think we might have named it as get logged in user in the server. Let me just go ahead and check that. Yeah, it's get logged in user. It doesn't really matter unless you understand what the meaning of it is. So let's keep it simple and name it get user over here. Let's change the endpoint to /user. This should pretty much remain the same. For the catch part, I'm going to throw a new error. And here I'm just simply going to write, please log in to continue. So this is when we're not able to access the user. So that would be in a scenario where the user either has logged out or the token has expired or is invalid. So you want to give them the message that they need to log in order to continue. Okay, so that is all for accessing all of these APIs. So we can go ahead now and connect the register function with the actual signup page. So let's go ahead and go to the signup page inside of pages. Where is that? Source pages. Let's go ahead and minimize the server clarity. Okay, so inside of signup, the first thing that I'm going to do is go at the top and import this function that we just wrote. So let's add a comment called functions. You can say it API functions if that makes more sense. I think functions is fine. Import, and with curly braces, add register, which is the name of the function, from the path. So it's one folder out. And then, okay, I think we've created the API folder outside of the source, which was not the case. So that's my bad. Just give me 1 second and let's add this inside of the source. Okay, because the code should be inside of the source. That's fine. And now we'll be able to see the API over here. Awesome. and get it from the user file. So we have the register function accessible over here. What we also want is to import a hook, which is called the use history hook from React Router DOM, and we'll use that to push the user, to redirect the user from the sign up page to the login page once they have successfully registered. So what I'll do now is do an import of use history from React Route DOM, and over here let's define it at the very top. Const history is equals use history, and just execute it. And now we can use this history constant that we've created to push the user. So let's create a handler for when the submit button is pressed. So we can call it handle submit, but I think I'm just going to call it handle register. So we can async. And as a first step, this is going to have an event passed to it. So I'll write e.prevent_default, which basically prevents from a state refresh once submit is pressed. So this is what we have. Let's go ahead and firstly add this at the bottom for the on click. So for the submit button, at the very end, I'm going to write on click. And once the button is clicked, we'll execute the handle register function, or basically it's a handler. The handle register handler, that just doesn't sound right. Anyways, so we go back to the top and we can go ahead and start coding. Okay, so we'll do a try catch. Let's handle the catch part. So we do need the toast package in order to display the errors or the success message. And for that, I have to go ahead and add toast to the app first. We've installed the package, but I did not add it to the app. So what we could do is, for now, let's just write an alert, and then we can see the change once I've added the toast. So for alert, just display the error, that's fine. And okay. So inside of try, let's do a const response. We'll do await register, and we pass to this register the username, email, and password. So that is how you pass the keyword arguments with an object. All right. So once we have a response, we check that if response has an error, then we can go ahead and do an alert for now, which will be replaced by toast response.error. Else, we'll do an alert for now. Let's do an alert response.message, and we'll also be redirecting the user to login. So that will be done using history dot. Let's do a history.replace, because we don't want the user to come back to sign up. Otherwise, the way to do it is history.push. So if you want to disable the back, you do a history.replace. Let's do a replace. And we add the endpoint, which is /login. All right. So let's go ahead and see this in action. I'll deliberately be writing some error because I don't want to register a new user and then go through adding the toast and doing it again. So I'll make sure it doesn't work. Right, Bob, because I know Bob is a user in the database already, and it won't let us register. The email, it doesn't really matter, but let's go ahead and add the actual email, password, and confirm password. If I press submit now, it runs and it displays the error saying the username is taken. Awesome. So our function is working. It is integrated with the server successfully. So as a next step, what I'm going to do now is go ahead and add the toast. And for that, let's go to app.jsx. At the very top, what I'll do is an import of toast and a toast container from React Toastify, which is the name of the package. We also need to add a CSS. Let me just paste the snippet and not type it. You guys can pause the video, make sure you have it nice and correct. All right, so now that we have these things, what I'm going to do now is go inside of the router, and before the header, what I'll do is add this toast container so that it is available inside of the app. So we have the toast container available. Now I can simply go back to the signup page, import the toast at the very top. So let's do an import toast from React Toastify. Awesome. And we can replace this alert with the toast. So this should be a toast dot. I think for these errors, it's usually warning, because if I want to say that the username is taken, no, I think this should be an error. That's fine. So we toast dot error. And for this, let's do a toast dot success, which would be something green. And even for this one, toast dot error. So let's go ahead and try the Bob username again to see the error first. Awesome, it says username is taken. Let's actually make this full screen, see how it would actually work. So if the username is changed and the email is still the same, email is taken. Perfect. So let's go ahead and actually register as a new user. It's very hard to think of new names. It should be second nature by now, but I still struggle. Okay, so let's go with Ron. Ron@ron.com. Let the password and confirm password be same, query 1 exclamation. So submit. It says sign up successful. Please log in to proceed, which is the message that we've got from the backend, and with the history.replace, we are redirected to the login page. Awesome. So sign up now works. So the next step is to do the same for the login page. Awesome. So let's go to the login page, and inside of the login page, the first step again is going to be add the comment functions, import the login from API user file. Let's import the use history and the toast. Let's go ahead and integrate the login function. I'm going to create a handler. Let's call it const handle login event, do an async, and prevent the refresh from happening. Let's add this at the bottom for an on click. Awesome. So we go at the top now, and we can add the code for it. Again, we'll do a try and catch the error. And for this one, it will be toast.error, and we simply just display the error. For the try, let's do a const response await login. Pass the email and the password as keyword arguments, and similar to what we've done before, check if it has an error, and if there is, we can simply display the error. So we could also actually clear all of the fields in the form. We won't be doing that for now because it just means more work, which as a developer I hate doing. Okay, so we have the if, and let's go with else, not esly. And inside of the else, it will be a toast.success, the response.message, Perfect. And now we'll be redirecting the user to the home page. So that is going to be history.replace, again replace to just a slash, which is the endpoint, the URL for the home page. Perfect. Is there anything missing, or do we have everything? I think we have everything. So let's go ahead and log in as the new user that we just created. Can make this full screen again. And it was Ron at ron.com. It's actually making error. That's the password. It's the correct password. And I'm going to press submit. It says invalid credentials. So it doesn't actually tell me if the email is wrong or if the password is wrong, which is a security thing that everybody should follow. So if I go ahead and create the correct email and I change the password to a wrong password and press submit, it says invalid email or password. Awesome. So now we can go ahead and enter the right credentials and see what happens. I'm going to press submit. It says login successful, which is the success message from the backend, and we are redirected to the home page. So the first thing that we should be looking for now is the JWT token. So if I go to inspect and let's go to application, and here we are. So inside of storage in cookies for the localhost 3000, which is our front end, I see a cookie named JWT, and it has this value, which is the JWT token. Oh, this is the value. All right. So for logout, what we're essentially doing going forward is to clear this cookie, and every time that happens, the user is not authenticated and it says that you're logged out. All right. So now we can go ahead and start working on the logout. And for that, the first step would be to add it to the navigation bar over here. Okay, so I'll be going to the header, source, components, and header. You can just copy and paste this one. So this one is not necessarily going to be a link, because all we want is to execute the handler once the logout button is pressed. So what I'll be doing is create a span, and the span is going to have a class name similar to the one above, so that it has the same styling. So it's a nav link. Let's change this to logout. Doesn't really matter because we're going to be deleting this anyways. So yeah, let's add it over here. Logout. It's a nav link. And what else do we want to add to it? So it is a nav link, but I don't see a pointer when I go on top of that. So for that, we'll just add an inline style. So style, and add a cursor pointer CSS to it, and that should do it. Okay, looks pretty much the same. And the final step would be to add the handler, and for that, let's import the function again. So let's go with functions, comment, create the import, which is logout from, let's see what the API is. All right, API and user. Also again need the history. React Router DOM. What do we? I think we need the toast too. Yeah, toastify. Perfect. So we go at the top. We are at the top. Let's do a const history equals the use history hook. All right, and we can go ahead and create the handler. I'll do a const handle logout. Make it. Let's write the promise using a .then over here, so that there's a little versatility in the code. And you can see promises in two ways. So I won't be making this an async. create E, which is the event, add the prevent default, and for this one I'll do a logout method and a .then. We'll get a response from .then, and inside of the response, which is if it's a success, I'll do a test.success response.message, and we can also redirect the user to login. Just be history.push/login. So if there's an error there, the way to handle it is .catch after the .then, and for this one, since this is a logout, you can simply do a console log for the error, and that should be fine. Let's go ahead and add this to the logout. Should be an on click for the span, even though it's not a button, that's fine. And we add the handle logout to it. Okay, what's the problem? It says use history is not defined. Use history, what am I doing wrong? Okay, have to import use history. It's fine, so we have that now. I'm gonna go ahead, let's make this full screen, and I'll open the inspector with the memory, and here's the token. So as soon as I press logout, I think this is just gonna go away if it works. All right, so let's press logout. Right, it says logout successful. We're back to the login, and we see that the token is gone now. Perfect. So that was logout. The thing that's missing over here is that we see the sign up, login, and logout together, which should not be the case. What we want is to dynamically render the options based off of whether the user is logged in or not. So we'll be using something called the React Context API and create a user context. So let's go ahead and see that in action. Adjust my screens, and as a next step, we'll go to the source and create a new file, call it reactcontext.js, and inside of this, let's import the create context from React, and using this, I will be exporting the newly created user context with an initial value of null. So I'll do create context, and the value that I want to give initially is null. All right, so now that we have created this, the next step would be to go to app.jsx. I'll do an import user context from this file. It should be just here, user context. Awesome. Define a state over here. I'll do user set user use state null, just the initial value. So this is the state that we want the user context to have, and for it to be available throughout the app, what we'll do now is, let's say just below the router, I'm gonna add tag. Let's call it user context dot provider. Okay, it's fine, we can create a tag ourselves. So we want a closing tag too, which should go at the bottom. Okay, now it works. That's fine. And to this user context dot provider, we want to pass the state that we just created. So as a value, let's do double brackets and then user and set user. So this way, the user and set user is something that's available throughout the app for us, and we can use it in the header, the login, and everywhere. We forgot to import the use state. Let's go ahead and do that. Use state, and this should be fine. All right. So now that we have created the user context provider, what I want is to go back to the login page, and inside of the login page, again, I will be importing this at the top. So let's do again the import the user context from the file itself. Okay, so now over here, now that we've defined the state, what we could do is, let's say right below the history, I'll do const, and I can get the set user from the use context hook, which needs to be imported at the top, and that's fine. We'll do that next. And we pass the user context to it. So we're using destructuring and getting the set user out of this user context. And at the top, with the use state, we can go ahead and import the use context hook too. All right, so we have that. And what we're trying to do over here is that the login as a response also sends us the username in the APIs that we created in the previous video. So for that, we'll be using to set the user. So I'll do a set user, and it is response.username to set it. And now we'll have the username set in the user state. And this is something that we want to access from the header of the app. So let's go back to header and again do the same thing. Let's do an import. Here we'll be getting the user and also the set user for the logout. Use context and the user context. Perfect. So now let's say we've logged in and we have the user. We want for this part to be displayed only if the user exists, and we want this part to be displayed, sign up and login, if the user does not exist. So for that, we'll be using conditional rendering along with the conditional operator. So let's go ahead and create brackets at the start and end. Okay, that's fine. So we say that if the user does not exist, we want to display this part. So I'll just create a fragment. And this part would be displayed if the user does not exist. And this list item should be displayed if the user does exist, which is the opposite of the first one. So let's go and see our options. You see that the logout is gone because right now we have not logged in. So if I go ahead and do login, let's go with Ron. And let's see what happens now. All right, so login is successful. We're at home and now I only see logout. Now what needs to be done is to set the user to null once we've logged out. And for that, over here, let's go set user to null, and we'll do a set user, add the value null to it. So if I go ahead and log out now, perfect, it says logout successful, and behind the toast, the sign up and the login options are back available. So the next thing would be to add this user's information to the home page. You might have noticed that in the first demo, that once the user logged in, the home page sort of changed to adding the user's name. So it was like Bob's home, or in this case, it should be Ron's home. So we'll go ahead and make those changes to the home page. Let's go to home. And now we'll be making some changes, and those changes are inside of the H1. So what we'll do is that if the user exists, we'll add a span tag. Let's give it a class name of text success. Let's add the user with an apostrophe S. And we also want some like a space. So let's do this. So it says user's home if the user exists. And that should be fine. Let's go ahead and test that. Login as Ron. Submit. Awesome. It says Ron's home. And if I go ahead and log out, make this full screen, logout, back at login. So if I go ahead and access the home page now, it just says home. Okay, so that was the home page. So what's missing now is to integrate and use the get user part. And let me tell you why we need this. So if I go to Ron at ron.com, log in, it says Ron's home because the React Context API has the user information, but this will not persist with a refresh. So if I go ahead and press a refresh, it just says home, and we have the sign up and the login. So even though the token is still available with the refresh, the token does persist in the memory. The context API loses the user information. So for that, what we'll be needing is to get the user information every time a user, let's say, go ahead and refreshes the page, and then go ahead and set it again with the set user. So for that to happen, we'll go back to the app.jsx. We go ahead and manage my screens. Let's go back. Let's actually stay here. That's fine. So I'm going to go to app.jsx, and inside of here, we'll be using the get user function. So like always, add a comment functions. I'm going to import get user from API and the user file. All right. And we want this to function every time the component mounts, loads. So we'll do a use effect for that, and that's fine. So let's add the use effect. And to that, we'll add an empty dependency array. That's fine. So inside of the use effect, let's do a const unsubscribe, and to this, I'm going to set equals to the get user, which is the function, and we do a dot then. So we have the response, and with the response, we'll check again for any errors. If there's an error with the response, let's do a toast response.error for this one, because it's just going to go ahead and say that please log in to continue. So we don't want this to be in a red toast. That's why I just do a toast, and this is going to be like a white colored theme. That's fine. And for an else, what are we essentially doing? So we'll just set the user, and there's nothing else to be done. So response.username, which is received from the response, and that is the dot then part. Let's do a dot catch. Okay, we catch the error. Let me set up the syntax nice and clean. And with this, we're simply going to do a toast again, a white one, which displays the error. So now that we have that, let's perform a cleanup and execute this. So it'll be return arrow function, and we write the unsubscribe. All right, so every time the refresh happens, this use effect will execute and it'll get the user. So now you see that it says Ron's home back. If I go ahead and refresh, it still says Ron's home, and that is about it for the user context. All right, guys, so the absolutely last thing for this tutorial series is going to be to add a redirect to it. So if I'm a user and I'm logged in, I shouldn't be able to access the login page because I'm already logged in. So right now, if I go ahead, even though there's no options in the navigation, and I go ahead and say /login, I'm able to go to login, and similarly /register /signup, my bad. Okay, so in order to prevent that, we'll be using something called redirect, which we can import from the React router DOM. So at the top, do a redirect, and how we'll check that is just before any of the routes, I'll just add this redirect tag, which is a self-closing one. What we want is for the user to be redirected to the home page if they're trying to, let's say, log in or go to sign up or any of these paths. But if the user does not exist, we want them to be redirected to the login page. So let's say I go to and redirect it to. For that, we add a conditional operator. So if the user exists, let's send them back to the home page. But if they don't, and let's send them back to the login page. The idea is when you have more routes and more protected paths, you want the user to go back to the login page if they're not yet logged in. Right now, if I go ahead and let's try login, I'm back to the home page. And that is it for the part 3. Right everyone, so this concludes the part 3 of the MERN Stack authentication tutorial series. If you enjoyed the video and learned something from it, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. This is Banish at You Suck at Coding. Until next time.